welcome to the Goethe-Institut. Thank you so much for coming to the closing event. It's been 4 weeks of our show, Foreground by Zun Lee. This is Zun Lee, the artist we've been working with for over a year. Yeah, thank you and congratulations. I won't go into super details either biographically or the show. Spacing did a pretty good job at sort of capturing what the show is about, and we have materials here. You can come to talk to Zun after, and we'll do all that. Just to say that, yeah, we met a year ago when you came to a previous contact photo show in here. We started talking, and then, you know, as I say, Instagram is the first entry-level portfolio these days. I looked at your work. We talked about street photography and what difference does it make, who's behind the camera, and what identities come through, and who's in front of the camera, right? So at the end of the day, this is a show about street photography, lingering and loitering. It's also a show about how to do justice to this portraiture, this form of portraiture, how to get it in to a gallery space. And it's taken in the public space. So public space was one of the things we talked about, and how different bodies move in the public space. And then as we went along and working on this show, we started talking about what Zun reads and what influences we have. The books that Zun himself publishes that are all now reflected in this little video salon. And then the other big element was music. You and I just also started chatting about what we listen to, what influenced us. German New Wave, anybody? You can ask Jonny, maybe that's another talk we'll do. We have some pretty, we went pretty deep. But then Zun said, you know what, like really, let me think about this some more, and I'll create 3 soundtracks. Well, was that 1? It became 3. It's hard to stop this now. And I mean, that's why, then that's why we're here today, to talk about that relationship between sound and music, and we'll turn it down in a minute. But you know, there will be music and sound as these guys talk. And just like pretty recently, this is an exhibition in the making, as we've been calling it. And part of the making was like, so how do we want to talk about it, and with whom do we want to talk? And we both immediately said Jonny, right? So, which makes this Jonny Dovercourt, of course, who is a longtime partner of the Goethe-Institut. I'm happy to say we've done many co-presentations and concerts together in clubs and all over the place. The last one was Hauschka, who then, whoops, a few years later won an Oscar.
He won
right?
an Oscar. Right, that's right. Yeah,
yes.
we're
you heard it here. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
And you saw it everywhere. And you probably know, of course, Jonny as the artistic director of Wavelength Music, super influential in the city. But he's also the author of this book, and that really encapsulates it, right? Any Night of the Week, a DIY history of Toronto music, 1957, before any of us were born, I'm glad to say, to 2001. And I mean, really, that was kind of, that hooked us on also the fact that you know the space and how music and visuals relate to space, and also maybe to biographies, how we explain ourselves. To ourselves and to each other. And with that intro, you can talk to these guys after and ask questions. I'll leave you to a, I don't know, we'll see, 20-minute chat. Maybe there's questions. I'll turn that music down and you'll turn that music up, right?
That's right. Thanks,
Over to you.
Yusha. Thanks for the lovely introduction and the welcome. I really appreciate the invitation to take part. And nice to meet you, Zun. Congratulations on the closing night of this exhibition in the making. I wanted to start with an icebreaker question. So when you're walking through the city, headphones in or headphones out?
Depends on the part of the city.
What's that?
Depends on the part
No,
of the
no, are
city.
you listening to music, or are you walking around with is the soundtrack,
So if I don't
the
take
ambient soundtrack?
If I don't take pictures, I
You don't take pictures, okay. And when you're taking pictures?
don't.
Interesting. So why so how did that come to be?
So I'm not naturally. I don't engage. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I'm.
Based on the work, it doesn't make sense. It seems like you're very engaged.
No, like when I photograph, it's like the camera gives me permission to kind of get really close to people, like really close. But like that's not my natural impetus, you know. So you know, especially in the wake of the pandemic, right? Like social distancing,
right?
But also it's just naturally like I just like to be in my own world, and yeah. So music is sort of my way of kind of just putting myself in my own world, and not having to get too close to people, right? So it's almost like two different personalities.
Yeah, I was thinking about that because even though I'm constantly, I work in music, I'm constantly sort of immersed in it. I find that I don't listen to music when I walk around. I love the ambient sound of the city, and for me, like listening to music when I walk through the city is really intentional. If I want to listen to an album, and then I started going down this whole rabbit hole of, is the album still relevant? Is the playlist still relevant? The idea of the album is like a 45-minute statement, and that still often like correlates to like a transit ride or driving to Scarborough or something like that to see my parents. But I wanted to ask you about, if you want to talk about the title of this exhibition, I'm making Foreground. Is it, you said that this is really sort of an exploration of the idea of loitering and this problematic notion of loitering. But you've incorporated other media, especially music. You've made these amazing playlists. Do you find that music is a way of sort of grounding ourselves in the city?
Yeah, so first, all credit to you for even coming up with the title, and playing with this idea of even, you know, foreground, but also foreground, meaning, you know, what is this idea of ground, and how do we ground ourselves in a city that often kind of pulls the rug from underneath.
Yeah.
Right. So, and you know, in a place where a lot of people feel unmoored.
Yeah.
Not just from one another, but from ourselves. Right? And how do we kind of find that anchor in our everyday lives? Right. For me, it was kind of a way to think about not just making images, but what are the images? What is the work that these images perform? Right. So not just in terms of us looking at them, but even the act. And I don't know how many of you here are street photographers in the sense, or photographers. Show of hands.
I don't know.
Okay, right. So
all are now, I guess.
yeah. I mean, and everybody has a phone, and we all probably take pictures with a phone, you know, as we kind of move through the city. So it's think about the moment of like not just when you make that photo, but when you get home, and then maybe you know you kind of remember a moment, and you go through your photo screen just to kind of remember how you felt. But then kind of that regrounding and repositioning yourself in that moment, but also in that space, in that time, and how that makes you feel. Right? And so for me, it's a way to kind of reinsert yourself into a landscape that often kind of you even remove yourself from, right? Because come home from work, you don't want to deal with, you know, your colleagues, your office, your wherever, you know, you spend your time in the day, and you just, you know, kind of put that behind you. Right? And so the images are a way for you to re-inscribe yourself into a certain situation.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I was thinking about, you know, music is often sort of prescribed to the background, consigned to the background.
Yeah.
And I love the idea that you sort of bring it into the foreground.
Yeah, and so everything for me is foreground, right?
Yeah.
There's no foreground and background and, you know, middle ground. Everything's in the foreground. People, buildings, like everything forms like a cohesive thing for me, right? And so music is very much part of it. Like, so when I take photos, the reason I don't put my headphones in when I take photos is like I hear images. Like the thing that you just mentioned about like how you want to absorb the cityscape and the sounds, and right, like not just what the city feels like, but what it sounds like. And for me, the sound is then important for me to kind of put my camera in a certain direction. Right? So, and you know, music kind of detracts from that.
Yeah, exactly. Because you wanted to give music its own, you wanted to have its own focus too, right?
Yeah, and then music, I mean, the playlists are not just the accompaniment, right? Or they're not supposed to be music or background. But most, especially the first soundtrack is actually supposed to mimic the photo walk, right? It starts with this invocation of like Lord Ganesha, right? And kind of removing the mental and otherwise obstacles from having the photo walk, and then it closes with the same artist. You know, it's just sort of say, you know, so how did it go, right? It's kind of like a 90-minute session, and kind of takes us, or ideally takes you through, you know, what it feels like to walk through the city with a camera, right? And kind of hoping for good encounters, but also knowing that maybe some encounters will be problematic, or, you know, even maybe, I don't know how many of you have experienced that, where you set out to photograph something for a day and you come up with nothing. Mm-hmm. Like, and your camera's literally there's nothing there, right? And then, you know, how do you put yourself out again, like to kind of deal with that, right? And that coming back with nothing time after time after time. So for every picture that you see, there's like 99 that didn't happen. And so it's you know, the soundtrack is also meant to kind of take you on that journey of you know, the highs and lows of that experience.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you how you came up with curating these 3 playlists. They're all really amazing and like worth listening to in their own right. And the first one is, I think you called it a series of oral memescapes was the term you used, and I want to ask about that. But it seems to be the first one, the first playlist seems like it's more autobiographical, more like vocal song oriented. Like how did you talked about it being this sort of journey, but how did that come together?
That was just like, without revealing my age, it's like 6 decades of music, right? So just, you know, born and raised in Germany, and then surrounded by music there, and what that felt like, and then, you know, moving to the US, and then moving here, and just kind of taking a piece of each place with me, but then also, you know, what does that sound like, right? And so every song is sort of a memory that we have, tethered to a place, but then also together it kind of speaks to, you know, not just remembering what once was, but how do we feel about the memory of Toronto in the 90s. So I moved here in 97, right, and have a very different memory of Toronto than what the city is now. So, you know, and what does the song encapsulate in that sense, right? So, and not just nostalgia or wishing for that time. I don't wish those times back, but also, right, like Toronto had a certain different feeling to it, and so that I wanted to just express that musically. What does that feel like, right? And then what is this song that's from here? How is it in conversation with music from somewhere else? Mm-hmm. So
I appreciate you including Estero and Chaos.
Thank you for finding it. Yes.
Yeah, gotta give shout outs to the CanCon. And then the second soundtrack is more instrumental, more contemplative, and sort of seems more like the sort of eternal journey you're talking about, sort of like when you're maybe not interacting with people or with subjects. Like how did that come together?
It was sort of a compliment, not so much contemplative thing, but that was more picking each song, like, you know, in terms of what it obviously stands for, and then every song is a remix of some other theme. I don't know if you picked up on that, but like there's a track by well-known female queer DJ, the Blessed Madonna, who remixed a song by Barbara Mason, another guy, which is a song from the 80s that was popularized by a film called Paris is Burning. Right, and so people felt that was kind of appropriative and derivative because of the filmmaker. But then I took a song that was like popularized by a woman R&B artist of the 80s, and then remixed again by a queer DJ, right? Sort of the queering of the queerness. And so every song has that same theme, right? It's a song that's familiar, but at the same time, then it's kind of disrupted by somebody else who picked up on that theme and made it something else. Which is, I think, kind of what Toronto means to me. Like, you know, kind of, there's all these people from different places, and then there's a way that Toronto has a way of kind of making it into something else, but then kind of also saying, oh, we didn't want to do this.
I grew up here, so that's really interesting take I've never heard before, which I really appreciate. And of course, I want to disavow myself of because I've, you know.
No, it's I think it happens in most metropolis that kind of, you know, where a lot of people are from somewhere else. Right? Sort of, what's a decent example? Draper right?
Right,
So,
yeah. And Toronto like doesn't want to touch. We don't want to touch this.
yeah, but also right, like I think,
Yeah.
like even though nobody wants to admit that they listen to this or follow the blow by blow, but
Yeah.
like I think we deep down internally we all have we take sides, but we don't want
Yeah.
to speak about it, right? So
I know.
like nobody would admit here that we take Drake's side. But at the same time, right, like internally we're like, you know, maybe we're a little bit more conflicted, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly. It's a hometown guy, but yeah.
And what does that mean, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that Drake is the hometown guy.
Yeah, exactly.
But also we can't or don't want to claim him, right? And so
Yeah.
each track kind of gives you that same feeling, right? Like it reclaims something, but at the same time, it's sort of like,
Yeah.
you know, in a way you don't want to touch it, right? So,
And I love your take about remixing, by the way. Like, that wasn't clear. I think it's just like such an amazing way of looking at the city like through fresh eyes. Yeah, and that's how I see like Toronto through this work for me as someone who grew up here. It's like in this. I was saying earlier today, like Toronto sometimes I could feel like the city that it's like it has this force field around you. Like sometimes it's just like, oh, I just feel so trapped here. And anytime we can sort of like see it through, especially through international lens and through having a conversation with other places, makes it feel like a less isolated place.
and it's isolation is hard, right? 'Cause,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I think we all feel that every day.
Yeah.
In some way, right? Whether, you know, through a job we hate, or a boss that just told us off, or, you know, a degree that we don't want to earn but we have to go to school for, or, right? Like, so there's a sense of us feeling disconnected from not just the city, but ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we kind of tend to externalize it to say, oh, Toronto does all these things wrong.
Mhm.
And we love to do that a lot.
Yeah.
But like, the things that Toronto could do better, right? So, but then there's also like the reason why we're still here. And so, you know, what is that reason that we're still here?
Yeah.
Right? And what is the promise that Toronto offers? And I think there's a way that images guide us towards holding Toronto to its promise, right? To be that aspiration that we all kind of want to see realized.
And like, what can we offer to ourselves, the people who live here? Like, that's like, as much as like, you know, we want to offer a lot to the world and be part of a big conversation, and that's really important too, but, oh gosh. It's more of a rhetorical question, you know?
I don't know. It's almost a question back to the audience, right? It's like, do you feel Torontonian? And like, what does that mean, right? Like, what does it mean to be Torontonian? Or as you go out into the world even, and, you know, do you feel like you represent the city?
Oh, isn't forever.
So what does it mean for you?
I know it's to be authentic and real, and there's a lot
Yeah.
of bullshit and fake shit going on here, and mediocrity that gets, you know, placed above things. But like you say, like Toronto used to be way better when we actually had spaces where we could get together at like Queen's Park, or like when there was parking lots, we have open jams. Now we have condos, and then we have like gatekeepers who want to gatekeep who gets to be put in art, and what gets tokenized as, oh, well, you know, you're black, but you gotta be a safe black, as opposed to like being like a just artist who happens to be black. We need you to like, you know, allocate art. You know, we need you to make it easy for white people to listen to your art or see your art. You know what I mean? And so Toronto is a mixed bag of things, and a lot of people don't want to deal with the undercurrents of what has built Toronto from, you know, depending on what generation you come from, and where we're going, and how it's in this place.
Please say your name.
Complex.
This is Complex, an artist. Thank you so much for coming here.
Yeah.
And that's
It's
their
over-
photo, which
yeah.
is about
Yes.
love
Mhm.
and Toronto, and that's what I love about you, that you make it a good place.
Yeah.
I'm here because of you.
Things complex.
You-
This like totally connects to what we were talking about on the phone earlier. We were talking about like the end of third places in Toronto, like the idea of the third place, whether it's a record store, or a music venue, or a clothing store, you know, the place you can go and it's not work or home, and it's like a really obviously it's sort of a pretty, like well-studied idea in urban planning and things like that, but it's still like something that's constantly worth talking about. Like those
Yeah,
spaces.
to me it's, you know, actually, Complex just really articulated it really perfectly, right? So, the city already means different things to different people, right? So, like, a certain intersection does not mean the same for certain people, right? Like, you have a different experience, I have a different experience, but also it's those differences that kind of bind certain things together, right? Like either a sense of precarity or a sense of, you know, like, do I belong here? And even articulating that question of difference kind of means that maybe you connect with somebody on that level, right? For me in the 90s, I kind of talked about this, right? Like, I identified with certain places as third spaces, right? Like Sam, the record man, or next door, like HMV, right? And I would spend hours there on every weekend, just not just to listen to music, but also knowing that like my tribe was likely there also listening to music, right? And we see the same people kind of just going to the CD racks and pulling out the last CD that I wanted. But you know, it was sort of part of that sociality. Also, there was no cell phones or internet, so right, the only way to connect is to actually go there. But also, you look forward to going there, right? And those places kind of disappeared, right? So now everybody's in their gated vertical communities, and right, kind of the interaction is not welcome, or it's policed in some way, right? And so it's more around like, you know, who shows up in a place where the default is that, you know, not the question of like, you know, what connects us, but like, what are you doing here? You know, like this idea of, I've never seen you here, you don't belong. And so, and I think that's fundamentally changed in certain pockets of the city.
But our independent record stores are still thriving though. We still have our Play-Doh Records going strong, and Sonic Boom, Rotate This, all these.
Are these places where you go and hang out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
There's a great doc about Play-Doh Record, which is a documentary. It's worth checking out. But yeah, I mean, those sort of, especially the mega stores, like the Sam and the HMEs, places that were kind of like almost like a shop, not a shopping mall, but like a central square where sort of everyone went, and it's sort of, that I think is missing because the sort of spaces have definitely become more niche and, you know, more specialized and involve more sort of seeking out.
Yeah, and yet we'll hang on to the symbol, right? Like the semiotic, right? Like the big neon sign.
Yeah.
Sam the record man,
the two spinning neon records.
Right. So remember the whole story about the signs and how they moved around and now they're but also
they're up really high.
Like,
they're like on top of a public health building.
Yeah,
somewhere
disconnected from the original purpose.
Yeah.
Right? So it does not point to a store somewhere, or it's just the aesthetics of that, right? And I think most people that weren't born then or like has a connection at the time, they don't probably even know what that sign even means. Right?
I know,
so,
it's a bit of, I mean, respect to the people that made it happen, but also a bit of memorialization for the sake of it.
Yeah, and so like, you know, so but again, like you know, and as a photographer, you kind of look for these things like, you know, so that sign now means something else.
Yeah.
Right? And so what does it mean to people who don't have that history of actually setting foot in that store? Or these images we talked about from Lauren Bathurst. So I have a ton of images from that intersection. I don't know if they're here, but they have like the honest eds and neon signs in the back, right? Like and so people, you know, either you know or you don't, right? And so it's that whole meme of like, you know, if you know, you know. But also then people have stories, right, of honest eds and what that meant, right? And we can talk about economics and affordable food, and, but also just, you know, that what are the stories that bind us to that place, right? And then where do these stories go? It's just oral, right?
Yeah, you were talking earlier about like photography as placekeeping, was that the word?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is like, it's not just the places, it's the people too, the people that like, inhabit it, and where are they?
Where are they?
So where are they now?
Like for me personally, it's that's a difficult one.
Yeah.
The people that I used to be surrounded by, I mostly like moved, and then I also moved a lot, right? So I moved here in '97, but then I left and moved to Philadelphia, Chicago, and then last couple years I was in Charlotte, and then I moved back here. So it's been this fractured experience also, and so it's hard to kind of re-experience the city when like you know, the people that you used to know 20 years ago are no longer here, right? So it's sort of like, oh, longer like bound to that locality. They're depending on people that are now somewhere else. And so I think the way pictures now travel on the internet is, I think, how these stories kind of get tethered to who we used to be.
Yeah. Any final words?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Are we out of time? I feel
we
like
do need to mention soundtrack number three.
we do need to talk about soundtrack number 3.
I'm not gonna let you go.
Work of Julius Eastman.
Julius Eastman.
Oh yeah.
It's really interesting. I was walking around listening to Feminine, the Eastman piece you picked, which is playlist number 3, and it really does sound like a conversation. It's got this call and response element to it.
Sure.
What made you choose that piece?
There was a version of that performance that I was looking for, actually, which wasn't available. So Julius Eastman, for those that don't know, was a black queer classical European composer who had a bit of a moment in the 70s and 80s, and then sort of died in obscurity. But his music has been sort of rediscovered and has been. There's been no formal scores, so people, just by listening to old performances that were taped, rescored everything that he has done, and it's now being performed again in concert halls around the world. But that specific piece is sort of a very simple theme of 2 notes that Eastman expanded into like an hour's worth of classical concert. But the performance I was looking for actually starts with Eastman going around and actually giving all the musicians soup. And you can hear the ladle hitting the plates and people eating, right? And what I like about that is that music is really like a social, communal experience, right? Like just like we talked about, right?
Yeah.
And so I think what attracted me to this particular piece is that the sociality of the give and take is very much how this piece even structures and evolves itself throughout the entire hour. Right? It starts really simply, and then like kind of builds and builds and builds, and then at the end it kind of scales back again, right? So kind of like a conversation or a gathering of friends, and you also know when it's time to go home, right? Like that moment. So again, it's kind of like a photo walk where you begin with anticipation, and then you have a bit of a climax. Maybe you have that 1 or 2 or 3 pictures that you really like, and then you kind of go home and you feel like you have energy and different. So
I felt like we were sort of like at that sort of point, like, hey, like sort of we've gone through the arc. We're like ready to sort of transition from like the serious combo into the chatter. I'm wondering if anyone had anything you wanted to add, any questions from like everyone's welcome to join the conversation.
Yeah,
like this like casual.
Yeah, we don't have soup, but
we don't have soup.
but we have samosas.
Yeah,
Samosas.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions for June about or anything you want to add? No, that's all right.
I subtly in the background switched on the Julius Eastman track.
Oh, okay.
The last one, it starts very subtle, so it'll come up as we're lingering.
It is subtle. It is a piece where it takes you a few minutes to realize it's happening, which I love. Especially it fits into the ambient soundscape, right? Like
it's
walking around.
It's how I kind of work, right? Like
phase in.
Yeah. It's I don't know how you guys work, but I don't decide one day that I want to go on a photo walk, and right, like if I'm in the mood, I always have my camera with me, and then like sometimes the mood hits me, or like I have an hour to kill between meetings, but I never like say, okay, on this day I'm gonna do a walk, or right, like it's never that structured, so I never know when it's coming or when it's happening, but when I know I'm in it, then I kind of have to honor it, if that makes sense. So
yeah, I thought of my final question.
Oh.
You called this an exhibition in the making. So tell me more about that. Is there a point that it'll be made, or will it continue to evolve?
Yeah, thank you for that. Actually, it was
I cranked it up a bit.
It's like,
that's all right.
It's like at the Oscars when the music starts.
Oh, we wouldn't know about that.
But it was actually Yutta's idea again to kind of think about like, don't make this overdetermined thing where you have a show and you have a set of images and then you just talk about stuff that pertains to these images. But much like a photo walk, we wanted to kind of build on the show as it happens. So I thought the best way to do this would be to invite people that like people kind of know and kind of ask people to contribute to the show. So what you see here is like images from Complex, from Sarah. I don't know if anyone else is here, but we wanted to actually. So we had a formal workshop where we kind of went around, this area and just kind of took some pictures. But I wanted just for people to come in and just contribute their images, right? And kind of be in correspondence with like the stuff that I contributed, or maybe bring a book, right? Like and put it here, and obviously you'll get it back. But kind of also make it your space, right? And so like what I really appreciate about the Goethe, like with Jutta and Heidina, is to really just like make this a space like we talked about, like literally make it a third space, right? So and then like if you want to just hang out, just spend your time and not just look at images, but maybe bring somebody you want to just have coffee with, right? And so really this idea of the exhibition as such a third space was something that we really wanted to build on.
Well, congratulations.
In the spirit of the exhibition, we can linger
Yes,
and maybe loiter.
Yes.
Have popcorn and talk to these guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jutta. Appreciate it.
Thanks. We'll keep going.
Yes.
Can't stop us. It's not a real close. Thank you, Jonny.
Thank you. How are you?
Just